Jessica Lee is the interim executive director of the Council of Korean Americans. I asked her about the significance of the remains being returned.
So 55 remains are being delivered from North Korea to Hawaii and eventually to mainland United States, where hopefully 55 families will get to finally honor their fallen heroes. And it's a big deal because we have not been able to deliver or have a mechanism for the two countries to resolve some of these issues that linger, almost 70 years after the Korean War, has passed. And so I think for all of us outside of the government who are watching what's happening, we're hopeful that this will lead to other humanitarian gestures between the two countries so that other families, including Korean Americans who have relatives back in North Korea who we haven't been able to get in touch with, will finally be able to do that.
Another thing that's, before we move on though, this is a minuscule amount though. You were mentioning
right.
7,700 remains, so there's
right.
still a lot more to be sorted out.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
One of the things I also wanted to ask you about, because it's gotten a lot of traction, is this dismantling of this site. Talk to me about the significance of that. Does it seem as though the DPRK is taking steps to really kind of meet the demands of the ROK in the United States?
I think so, but it's tricky because I think North Korean government, as is Washington, D.C., is trying to assess whether they need to take 2 steps forward so that the United States will also meet them halfway, or they just take half a step, or what? I mean, the idea would be that the two countries act in a calibrated and kind of a predictable way, because right now what's missing is trust. So even though North Koreans are doing what they did regarding the site, there is still skepticism in Washington that that is, in fact, a legitimate step toward denuclearization. Mm-hmm. And so as long as we have this level of mistrust between the two countries, no matter what steps they take, it will not kind of resonate. And so I think, and that's why what you started off earlier with the remains is so significant, because when you have humanitarian issues that actually gain traction and momentum and progress, that builds the trust level much higher. And I think that will enable the two countries to tackle some of the harder issues, which is denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
But one of the things you see in any type of arrangement like this, especially when you're talking about distrust, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, but at some point, what are you going to give me?
Right.
Have we reached that point where the DPRK is going to say, look, you guys have got to take some steps as well?
I think so. I think that's exactly right. And I think, unfortunately, the press coverage around Secretary Pompeo's visit, being, less than perfect because, there's concerns that United States is not doing enough, as you said, to kind of give up or to be more conciliatory, right, as we tried to come up with a joint plan. I think that's right. I mean, the reality, though, is that at least as far as what I can tell, from Washington, it is really difficult for, I think, most people here in D.C. to think about putting so much on the table for North Koreans that it almost makes it seem like we're kind of letting them walk all over us. And that's certainly not what we want. At the same time, only focusing on the nuclear issue, when again, there's so many other issues that have languished as a result of the status quo, I think is also a missed opportunity. So there has to be a middle ground. And I think people in Washington and Pyongyang have to be more realistic about what it's going to take. And it's going to require some hard choices.